Welcome to the AICPA Town Hall Series, your resource for the latest news and updates on pressing issues facing the accounting profession.
Good afternoon and welcome to this Thursday, August 21st edition of the AICPA Town Hall. My name is Michael Cerami and I am thrilled to be one of your hosts for today. I hope everyone is enjoying these last few days of the unofficial end to the summer. I know we think of them as kind of the dog days of summer, but I did want to point out that on the August 7th town hall, we actually broke another live attendance record with over 14,000 attendees tuned in. I think that was really exciting for the team, and we really appreciate the participation and enjoy the fact that hopefully we're delivering value out to the entire town hall constituency. So let's see how we do. We're a little bit later in the summer this week. I know many folks have said hello, dialed in from the beach somewhere. So hopefully you all, like I said, are enjoying these last few days before we get back to it in September. With that, we've got a great lineup for you today. We're going to get a brief DC update from Rachel Dressen out of our DC office. Content's a little light this week. It's kind of the calm before the storm, but Rachel does have some updates as we finish out the August recess, getting ready for folks to come back in September. We're really excited to have as our guest today, former IRS Commissioner Danny Werfel. Danny is going to join Melanie Lauridsen, who many of you know from our tax advocacy team, and they're going to talk about modernization of the IRS, and Danny's going to give us a real behind the scenes look at where things stand from that perspective. And then Melanie will finish up with a short technical update segment. And then we're going to shift gears a little bit. We're going to invite in our old friend Tom Hood. Tom is part of the leadership team at AICPA and leads business engagement and growth. He and his team are doing a ton of work with our members in industry and the future of finance. And so we're going to talk a little bit about the role, the shifting role of the CFO. And Tom has a lot of really great insights and perspective as it relates to that. Lisa Simpson and myself will both be connecting with Tom in that discussion. And then we'll close out with open forum and closing remarks. So full agenda, lots of good content, and we're excited that you're here with us today. So let's go ahead and jump right in and start with our DC update. Rachel, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
Good to see you, Rachel. I know you're probably enjoying maybe a little bit of a respite before things get a little chaotic again. It seems like it truly is the calm before the storm. I think once September 1st hits, things are going to spike pretty good, but maybe give us the latest from the administration's perspective.
Yeah, you're right. So we're still in the August recess for Congress when the members of the House and the Senate, they go back and work in their states and their districts for what is typically the longest period of time that they're not in DC. But that doesn't mean that there still isn't things happening, and we have a few things to talk about related to the administration. So the first one is, since the last town hall, there has been news related to the IRS that has come out. It was announced that the president would be nominating the commissioner of the IRS, Billy Long, to be the ambassador to Iceland. So he's no longer the commissioner at the IRS, and instead Treasury Secretary Bessent is now the acting commissioner over there. So that was some big news that has occurred. We've had a number of acting commissioners this year, and we continue to work with whoever's over at the IRS, and Melanie's team has a great relationship with individuals over there, and so we continue to work with them. But that does mean that it will set up the process of the nomination and the confirmation process of a new commissioner. So the Senate will then go through that process of a hearing and then the committee vote and the floor vote, which can take some time. So it may be a little while until we have a new official commissioner or over at the IRS. So that's some news that has come out since the last town hall. And then also related to tariffs, that's something that we know that a lot of you are following. There has been some news in the past 2 weeks that the negotiations with China are ongoing. And so they decided to have a 90-day extension from the deadline that had been set for when tariffs would increase with China. So the tariffs will continue to be 30% for Chinese goods coming into the US and 10% for US goods into China, and avoiding the increase that would have been 145% or 125% tariffs respectively. So that is some news in which, it just allows them more time to have these negotiations, and we'll see if they'll come up with a deal before the November 10th deadline that has now been set.
Thanks, Rachel. And I know there's a lot going on, a lot of noise, I'll call it noise, in the marketplace and jockeying around California, Texas, other states for this potential redistricting.
Yeah, so that's something that we're following quite a bit because it could impact the control of the House next Congress. As you know, the Republicans hold the majority in the House right now, but it's by a very, very small margin. And so any one of these changes could impact who holds control after the 2026 elections. So just taking a little bit step back for those who aren't following this as closely. This all started back last year in 2024 when the Fifth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals made a ruling. And based upon that ruling, the Department of Justice has sent a letter to the Texas governor, Governor Abbott, saying that there are 4 districts that they've identified in Texas that are unconstitutional. So after Governor Abbott received that letter in July, he added to the agenda for their special session that is currently going on right now, redistricting. So that has set off a number of different things in which it looks like the map that the Texas legislature will likely move through will benefit Republicans as much as, potentially with 5 seats that could be flipped. And as a result of that, then the California governor, Governor Newsom, has said that he will then take action in California, and that process is starting. It's a little bit more complicated in California because instead of having the process in Texas where it's the state legislature that determines the map, 10 years or over a decade ago or so, in California, voters voted for an independent commission to do that. So in order for a new map in California to occur mid-decade, it will require a vote on the ballot by voters that would have to be voted on. It looks like they may try to do that in November. So what they're trying to do there is Governor Newsom is trying to balance out the 5 potential Republican gains in Texas with 5 Democrat gains in California. But it's not just those states. It's also started the conversation in other states like Florida, New York, New Jersey, Indiana, Missouri, Maryland, Illinois, and others. And then there's also Ohio, which by the Ohio law, they have to redistrict because they didn't have bipartisan support for their 22 maps. So there's a lot going on regarding redistricting. And depending on where you're living, this could impact who your representative is, but it could also impact us nationally on who controls Congress in the next 2 years.
Yeah, it's a great summary, Rachel. I mean, it is. It's a chain reaction. It's a slow burn, but it can have really broad implications for the midterms, like you said. So it's something we'll continue to monitor and share out as things get more clear with the town hall community. But maybe the biggest thing before us as we approach September is just the government funding and how that is all going to shake out. I know when I talk to you and Mark and the team, the likelihood of a shutdown seems very real. And I don't want to call it likely, but clearly something top of mind and that folks are going to have to work through.
Yes, so there are 12 appropriations bills. There's no way they're going to be able to pass those 12 appropriations bills and send them to the president's desk before the end of the month. And that means they're going to have to pass a continuing resolution or a CR. We don't know what will happen with that. in order to pass a CR, they need 60 votes in the Senate. Republicans only have 53 votes, meaning that there will have to be 7 Democrats on the Senate who will vote with Republicans. And so it's unclear exactly what will happen when they come back, but that is like you said, the biggest issue confronting them and the one that they will be the most focused on when they come back after the recess.
Well, thanks, Rachel. Great breakdown. Maybe enjoy these last few periods of quiet that you have. We're going to be back. The next town hall will be September 11th, and I'm sure you're going to have a pretty full, you and/or Mark will have a very full update as it relates to DC. So thanks, and we'll see you soon in open forum. All right. So with that, I'd just like to welcome in Melanie and Commissioner Werfel. Hey, Melanie. Hello, Danny.
Well, hello.
Welcome. So Melanie, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Sure. So today we have the privilege of having former Commissioner Danny Werfel. And as Michael said, we are very privileged for him to give us some insights. So currently, Danny is an executive in residence at the Johns Hopkins School of Government and Public Policy. And with him, he will be able to share his insights. But before we dive into modernization, I have a question that our members really care about, and that's the executive order for modernizing payments to and from America's bank account. And that requires a shift to electronic funds transfers for nearly all financial transactions involving federal agencies. And the IRS has already said that they plan on phasing out paper checks by September 30th. So Danny, how do you think this mandate will impact taxpayers?
Well, I would start by saying this is something that we were looking at closely when I was commissioner for 2 different distinct reasons. One was the challenge with fraud and error associated with paper checks. Paper checks getting stolen out of the mail or being essentially appropriated in ways that were inappropriate, where electronic transfer of funds could solve for some of those issues. And so this is something that the folks over at Treasury who deal with payment integrity were really interested in. And the second thing is just to reduce the amount of paper coming in to the IRS. That a lot of the customer service resources that exist at the IRS spend a lot of time managing all the paper that comes in. And yes, most taxpayers file electronically, and many taxpayers choose to either pay electronically on the IRS website or get their checks through direct deposit. But the reality is that our country is big. We got a lot of filers, and the amount of paper that comes in, especially during filing season, is enormous and requires a ton of hands-on resources to open those envelopes, get the correspondence, the forms, and the checks all into the right places inside our submission processing centers. Those folks, if they weren't opening those envelopes, could be doing other things. So there is an efficiency benefit to the overall customer service apparatus, the less paper, and in this case, the less paper checks. But that doesn't mean it's not without its issues and pain points. And 2 come to mind right off the bat. One is the unbanked, those individuals that don't have the means or the access to pay or receive funds electronically, and we have to work on solutions for those individuals. And the second is people overseas, where there currently isn't an option to do direct deposit into a foreign bank account. So there's work to be done, I think, to get ready. If the IRS is a go on September 30th, it may be a go. Maybe we'll get a plan here. It's a go in certain waves. Maybe certain taxpayers are first out of the gate and are constrained to only electronics. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But I think it'll be important for organizations like AICPA and others to raise questions about some of the logistics and the challenges of moving in this direction, which I do think has positives, significant positives in terms of integrity or fraud and error, and in terms of IRS efficiency.
So Danny, you hit on so many points that our members are really concerned about. And, the two main people of hardship, that was definitely, we submitted a comment letter on that. So thank you for touching base on that. So I'm assuming there will be more to come, more guidance from the IRS, and hopefully, we'll be able to manage that as smoothly as possible. So diving into IT modernization, from the time that you were there, what are the IRS's goals for IT modernization? And what specific outcomes are they hoping to achieve? Are they looking to improve taxpayer services, increase efficiency, enhance security? What are your thoughts?
Well, I'm going to take you back in time to March 2023 when I arrived at the IRS. This was on the heels of the 2022 filing season, which did not go well. When you look at the performance metrics for phones, answering the phones, record low level of service. A lot of our walk-in centers were understaffed or shuttered. It was really difficult to get an appointment. We had record high paper backlogs that were still a vestige of COVID and the COVID shutdowns, and stagnant technology. There hadn't been a lot of customer-facing or taxpayer-facing updates to the website or our app platform, and a lot of stagnant technology going on kind of under the hood of the IRS with our infrastructure. But where we started was customer service. Now, that's what we were optimizing for when I first arrived. And I really tried to simplify what the vision was, what the elevator speech was for modernization. Because, you walk into the IRS, and if you're fortunate enough to be the commissioner, early on you get this tech briefing, and in order to lay out the tech architecture of the IRS, it's like the wall the size of a gymnasium with super fine print of all the various systems and the interconnections of them all. It is an extremely complicated and messy architecture. So when you say to modernize the IRS, how does the average taxpayer understand it, and how will it resonate in a nonpartisan way? It should resonate with people from all income levels and all political stripes, etc. And what I came up with, which was a very customer focused or taxpayer service focused vision, was simply that all taxpayers should be able to do all interactions with the IRS digitally or virtually if they choose. And that wasn't the case, still isn't the case. Right. There are transactions that still have to be done via paper. The certain documents can't be uploaded, or there are limits for uploading them. The account that you have, if you want to launch it, your individual taxpayer account or your business taxpayer account, doesn't have all the access points into your tax records, your transcript, and all the things that you might want to do on that platform, similar that you would do with your favorite online bank, just hadn't been developed yet. And that is a reflection of budget cuts and some other historic challenges. So for me, the vision was both all taxpayers should be able to work with the IRS just like they work with their bank, their online bank. And then the other vision was every time someone comes back to the website or the app platform, it should look different and be enhanced in terms of, oh, here's a new functionality that didn't exist. Yet another document now can be uploaded. Yet another tool is here to understand your status, see the correspondence that the IRS may or may have not sent you. All of that should be increasingly available and at your fingertips. And so we just started to work furiously to build out those functionalities. And we were able to make more updates to the platform, the web platform, in 2 years than in the previous 20 combined, because we had funding, because we were laser focused on it, and because the rest of the world had already gone there. We weren't breaking new ground. I remember when we added technology to the call-in center. And one of the things we added was a callback option.
Yep. Very popular.
Very popular. And I had to be careful. I didn't mean to say we should get the Presidential Recognition Award for this. This is not rocket science, but it isn't free either. It requires an investment. There's a technology and engineering fix that allows for that, and a business process reengineering to make sure that the customer service reps are now moving into the spot where there's someone waiting in the queue for a callback. Again, not rocket science, but we needed to put in the sweat equity to get it done, and we didn't have the discretionary resources previously to do it. So the work that we were doing, brick by brick, as I used to say, was really, again, just the type of sweat equity work, roll up your sleeves, get it done to start building the technology platform and interface that should have been built years ago. Now that's on customer service. There are other dimensions to the modernization that we laid out in our strategic operating plan that was first issued in 2023 in the spring and then reissued in 2024, which hit other parts of the IRS to give view in terms of what does it mean to modernize our enforcement and compliance arm? And I could talk to you about that. And what does it mean to modernize what I referred to earlier as under the hood? You hear this phrase, the IRS is 1960s technology. It's the same technology as during the Kennedy administration. And that is an oversimplification. The reality is that a lot of the software and the hardware have been updated, but the underlying code that some of the main systems operate on is older code. And think about it like as almost like DNA. If one line of code is out of whack, that can throw everything off and create all kinds of complications. And so you got to be extraordinarily cautious as you're modernizing that code. Now, just as I was getting there, AI was making all these advancements in terms of coding, and I did suddenly to find that code that may be miscoded or to update a whole series of codes that may have taken a full year just to make sure we got it right, maybe can now be done in a month or a week. So I do think there's some exciting innovations in AI that not only will help you with the call center, because you'll get an answer quick from a computer or a robot versus a human, and it'll be a good answer if the IRS does it right. And AI will be embedded in the process by which they update the code. And if it's done well, we should see a significant acceleration to move the IRS infrastructure into a modern environment.
Wow, Danny, I think you answered a lot of questions that I had in my mind, like what kind of technologies are you leveraging? And you mentioned AI. I wanted to address or ask about the COBOL system, which you already referenced for that. So thank you for those insights. So another question for you, though, is from your perspective, is the modernization plan currently funded to get to that vision? Because it seems to me, private sector vision, equivalent kind of vision. Is it funded?
So no, it's not. And this was always a challenging moment as commissioner to explain this. We got $80 billion under the Inflation Reduction Act. And right. The idea that I as commissioner could ever cry poor is outlandish, right? Then we had 60 billion because 20 billion was pulled back as part of a negotiation to lift the debt ceiling. So now we're down to 60 billion. I still felt like that still felt like an outlandishly high number to cry poor. The issue is that the money is segmented, okay? You have a big portion of that money is on enforcement, and then a very small portion of that money is on services, and then there's a modest portion that's kind of in the technology space, and that money was over a 10-year period. And so it wasn't like we had $80 billion every year. And when you started to break down and take away the enforcement dollars, which were meant and dedicated to hire people, more auditors, you ended up with a technology budget that was strong and robust, but we were going to hit some type of cliff as we were modernizing an extraordinarily large and complicated system. It was one of these things where it costs what it costs. I mean, there certainly were paths that someone could come in and kick the tires on our plan and say, this software is too expensive, or this integration contract could be cut by 10%. And yes, I'm sure there was some savings that could have been had, because nobody's perfect as they design their critical path. But we would have gotten a lot done with the technology funds under the Inflation Reduction Act. But where things stand now, if you look at the president's budget for 2026, there is a plus up in taxpayer services. In fact, there's language in the IRS budget that's public that says if we can't rehire or hire, because they lost a lot of people in the beginning of the administration in the DOGE sweeps that came across, the budget basically says if we can't rehire 11,000 customer service agents, we're gonna have a rough filing season. That's in the budget, so there's a suggested plus up there. But then there's requested cuts in technology. I will note that the House and the Senate have responded. The Senate is not granting the IRS that plus up. It's holding them steady in services. And the House is cutting it deeper. So the latest House and Senate marks do not fund these 11,000 new people that are needed. But in all scenarios, we're looking at a cut in the technology budget. And it may be, Melanie, because if those that have seen me speak or worked with me know that I never claim to have the monopoly on the right answer. And I'm always open to the idea that we might not have seen the path that we should have seen. It is possible, I suppose, that with even on a smaller budget footprint, you could outfit some important and fundamental technology changes that will make up for lost staff and benefit all taxpayers with better service, better enforcement, and better data security and other infrastructure needs. But we haven't seen that plan yet. And I testified before the House about a month ago, and you certainly don't have to watch the tape of it on C-SPAN. I would say I can sum it up in one statement, which was my testimony was like, it will be great when we see the IRS modernization plan, their version of it. When we issued ours, it was 200 plus pages. And frankly, we were criticized that there wasn't enough detail in it. And I welcome that kind of feedback. You want more detail? Let's give them more detail. Right now, we don't have a modernization plan. So I don't yet know how to take the smaller budgetary resources and see how it's lining up against potentially an updated set of priorities that the IRS has to update the code, to create that, that financial services modern platform that would allow all of your needs to be met by a few clicks, so that we could downsize the call center at some point. Because for these financial services firms that have modernized their online footprints, they've obviously seen a lot less foot traffic to their bricks and mortar facilities. That means we could potentially downsize our walk-in centers. And they've also seen a precipitous drop in 1-800 calls because the online solutions are so effective at answering questions. If the IRS can achieve that, that will have significant positive impact on the amount of people they need to retain and their performance. But at this moment, on August 21st at 3:30 Eastern time, we still don't have that plan.
So to be clear, you don't think that the IRS has the workforce, the skill set, the people necessary to be able to fully implement it. Is that what you're thinking?
My hypothesis is that right now they do not, that investments are needed. But I'm judging that against a plan that I haven't seen yet. So if a plan was developed that basically said, here's the milestones, we're going to tackle this work stream, and this work stream, we're going to do it in this sequence. This is what the to-be vision is for this functionality. It's going to take us 6 months. It's going to cut. Here's the line item for the budget. Yeah, I would have, I think, a more informed reaction. I do think the IRS has lost a lot of talent, and a lot of institutional knowledge. And I worry about replacing that quickly. And the reason is like, it's not just, I believe, because I worked with them, that the IRS had technologists in place that that had vision, that could see a future. They needed the resources. They needed barriers unlocked. In some cases, maybe some training and some collaboration, but the talent and the vision was there. More of it is helpful. Okay, that's part of it. But also what worries me the most about the loss of IRS talent is that when you launch a new technology, especially in a high stakes environment like the IRS, you got to test it. You got to make sure that you know, and these people know where the potholes are. They know what to test for. They know what scenarios to present to the technology to see if it's going to be more susceptible to a cyber attack, to see if it's going to confuse a taxpayer, to see if it is going to create a mistake inadvertently that creates more ripple effect mistakes. These are the people that I worry about aren't there to really triangulate when the technology is up and running, to make sure that that there's efficacy to it and that it's safe for effective tax administration. And that's a bigger part of my worry, because people could say, well, you could always fly in an army of people from Silicon Valley, and they'll have these amazing understandings of where we can go cutting edge and bleeding edge. And I don't doubt that. And I'm sure if I met these people, they would wow me with their understanding of the art of the possible of technology. And if they spent a little bit of time in the IRS, they might be like, and here's what you could have done that you didn't do. That's possible. I don't know if it's going to happen, but it's possible. But what I'm not convinced can happen is you can fly in a set of experts that know how to test the technology in that environment, that understand the unique risks that exist in launching technology on that older architecture in this space, and with the associated risks that exist in the tax space for confusion, cyber risk, data privacy, insider threats. I could go on and on. All of that, by the way, Melanie, happening when they are have big to do on their plate, which is to re-engineer the IRS to get ready for OB3A. It sounds like a Star Wars character.
It sure does. So Danny, I have like a million more questions to ask you, and I think your insights are so valuable, and I really do appreciate the insights that you've shared with us today, and I really do hope to have you back on the town hall again so that you can continue sharing insights. So with that, we thank you for your time.
My pleasure. Anytime, Melanie.
And really, I do hope to pull you back in. So moving on to our technical updates, but still on the topic of IT modernization. So TIGTA came forward with a report on the IRA spending on technology. So on August 11th, TIGTA, which is the Treasury Inspector General of Tax Administration, they issued the report to see where the IRS was, because essentially the IRS's reliance on the legacy systems, the hardware, and the programming can pose a significant risk to the IRS's ability to deliver its mission. So as Danny covered, the IRS was funded through the Inflation Reduction Act, and that money is available through September 30th of 2031. So what did TIGTA find? Well, the IRS has a history of cost overruns and delays with IT modernization efforts. However, TIGTA did conclude that the IRS was making progress while adhering to its goals. And in March, through this past March, IRS has spent approximately $5.7 billion on technology transformation efforts. Also in March, Treasury did announce a short strategic pause of IRS modernization, and they restructured the IT department. So the idea of this restructuring was to allow for better and faster decision-making. And the IRS Acting Chief Information Officer, he outlined immediate priorities and next steps that the IRS is going to take. And these include things such as preparing for the next filing season and also accelerating progress in the areas that require faster coordination and progress. The IRS also launched what is called the Technical Road Mapping Initiative, and that includes establishing an interface to enable consistent and secure access to data across various platforms, which if you're in tax, you all know that's really important. So you think about the times that you call the IRS and the IRS assistor is unable to provide you information, since that piece of information, what you really need, is on a different platform and they just don't have access to it. So hopefully soon we'll be seeing some improvements firsthand of what we see coming through that. Now, on this next slide, I know that we've talked about the scams targeting tax professionals, and unfortunately, there's a new scam and that we need to be aware of. And what that scam is, it aims to collect tax professionals' electronic filing information, identification numbers, which is also known as an EFIN. So how does the scam work? Well, the scammers pose as tax software providers, and they send you an email, so the tax pros an email, and they request that you provide them the EFIN information by fax. And when the tax pro, of course, faxes their EFIN information, the scammer uses that to then steal client data and file fraudulent returns. Now, members who receive these emails, they shouldn't respond to them, and they should notify like TIGTA immediately, and also contact the local IRS stakeholder liaison. Now, the IRS and their Security Summit partners, they highlighted the importance of the multi-factor identification and also the IRS Identity Protection Personal Identification Numbers, which is the IP PIN, which is there for your security, and it's available to all of your clients and also yourselves if you're interested in it. And there's also a link on this slide for resources that can help with identity theft. Moving on to disaster relief. For those in West Virginia affected by severe storms, winds, flooding, and landscapes, that began on June 14th. The IRS has extended the disaster tax relief until February 2nd. Now, we're also in the heart of the hurricane season, and unfortunately, we expect to see more disasters. And we also, of course, expect the IRS to offer further relief during this time frame. So please keep up to date to the IRS's relief and the services that you as a CPA can offer your clients by going to the AICPA's Disaster Relief Resource Center. Okay. On to this next slide, I want to highlight some information from the IRS, and I did see some of the questions coming in, and I'll try to get what I can. But this is, again, high level. So with HR1, the IRS created a landing page and a web page for it with implementation guidance, and most recently, they posted guidance on the termination of the clean electricity production and investment credits for wind and solar facilities, which is relevant now. Separately, the IRS announced that Forms W-2, 1099, and 941, among other payroll forms, will remain unchanged for 2026. So again, the tax withholding tables will not be updated. And also the IRS is telling the employers and payroll providers to continue using the current procedures that they've been using right now. Now, I know I just told you that there were no changes to Form W-2. However, the IRS did publish the 2026 Forms W-2 and W-2C, and the draft forms shows new boxes. So 14B, which is the Treasury Tipped Occupation Code, which we expect will be populated by a code provided by the IRS by October 2nd in that list of qualified professions. The 2026 W-2, the draft, also includes additional boxes of 12 TP, which has to do with qualified tips, 12 TT, which has to do with overtime. And we also see a 12 TA, which is for employers to report for the Trump accounts. Now, the instructions in the form also hint that there could be a new schedule called A1 for Form 1040. And we've seen some drafts of the 2025 for the 1040, but we haven't seen the final one. So we just don't know yet if this new schedule would be for 2025 as well as 2026. So on to this next slide, and I am running out of time, but I do want to highlight the masterclass that we offer. There are a lot of questions around HR1, and we really do have this great resource. It is for a fee, but also brings together 22 experts in the field that will cover truly the nuts and bolts of HR1s. And there are various purchasing options, which you can do standalone webcasts, you can do a PFP bundle, you can do a tax bundle, and then you can do the ultimate bundle, which brings both of those two bundles together, and there will be savings with that. The one thing I do need to say that if you do choose to bundle, you need to select the date when you in the registration, and that's the way you're able to get the discount. And the instructions are on the registration page. And on this next slide, I do want to highlight some of the most recent tax resources that you see. Those 4 on this slide, they are open to members, and those have downloadable charts. It touches base on ERC. It also has a PFP, personal financial planning podcast, and also information for ID Me, which there is a lot of issues with that, and our members can go through that. So again, those are available to all AICPA members. And I'll make a plug that if you are looking for a deeper dive, you can also join the tax section. So with that, I'm out of time, Michael, and I turn it over back to you guys.
Melanie, that was fantastic. A lot to cover. Great segment with Commissioner Werfel, and great rundown on this latest tax technical update. So go ahead and take a breather. We'll see you in a couple of minutes in open forum, but thank you, Melanie. And let's invite in Lisa Simpson and Tom Hood. Hi, Lisa.
Hey, Michael, good to see you. Hi, Tom.
Hey, Tom.
Welcome back.
Michael, Lisa, great to be on here with you guys.
It's great to have you both. I know, Lisa, this is probably the latest in the show. We brought you in today. We had a lot going on there in the beginning, but always good to have you here for your expertise.
Thank you.
So, Lisa, maybe you want to set up this segment with Tom a bit and give it some, frame it before he goes ahead and jumps in.
I'm happy to do that. I have the distinct honor of working with Tom regularly throughout topics that embrace the interests of our members in business and industry, which is half of the AICPA membership, and looking at how they integrate with the issues impacting public accounting firms as well. Tom and I touch base on all kinds of different topics, but I knew that he had recently had his finance leadership group at a meeting in our Durham office, and Tom loves to provide us information on what the top issues are that his particular constituency is talking about and thinking about. So I thought it'd be a fun conversation. We're going to talk about tariffs. We're going to talk about changing skill sets. And then we're going to talk about some new resources that we're both really excited to bring to the audience. So Tom, with that, why don't you catch us up on what your finance leaders are thinking about as we are all the way into August of 2025?
Awesome. Well, and it's important for everyone to know that while this future finance group is a whole lot of really big corporate CFOs, we present all spring to state societies, our own conferences all over the country. So this covers the middle market as well. We poll our audiences frequently, and we're finding that these are pretty consistent regardless of the size of the enterprise. Now, the scale of what they're dealing with might be different, Lisa, but they're basically the same types of issues. And it's interesting because this one shows the movement since last December when we did this poll, but we updated this poll actually back in July. And so the need for new skills popped up to number 1, as you can see, along with Gen AI and AI, which moved up. Accelerated digital transformation moved up. Innovation and growth is new to the scene. And we think that's because most of these corporate finance leaders, typically CFOs, could be a controller or CAO as well, but they're starting to turn their attention to helping the company innovate and grow and not just focus on cost, which actually embodies the changing role of the CFO. And then, interesting enough, talent moved down to number 5, although they would say it's not because it's deprioritized, it's just because the other pieces rose up in terms of what they had to deal with.
I'd say from my lens, talking with members primarily in public accounting, a lot of these issues overlap. Obviously, a lot of conversations going on about how to upskill, how to reskill, how to bring emerging professionals faster up the value chain using technology, using Gen AI, and helping them deliver value to the clients more quickly. So definitely overlap there. Innovation and growth. Yep, we talk about that. Finding and retaining talent. I think from my perspective, it depends on where you are in firm size. A lot of the larger firms we talk to are in a fairly comfortable position when it comes to talent, but medium firms, those mid-market firms that you were talking about, and smaller firms especially are still looking to find and retain that top talent.
And then I would also add real quick that for the public accounting folks out there, this is a voice of customer. So what you can do is take this and use it to ask them what are their top issues. So then you can start to track kind of what's keeping them up at night. And that gives you a good place to start a good conversation.
Well, and on that, Tom, again, this is the top issues that they're facing. So it's going to inform where they're going to spend their time in 2025.
Yeah, and this one came right from the Gartner CFO conference this past May. We were invited and actually spoke there, but this shows where the Gartner's research came out with where the CFOs are spending their time. If you look at those topics, they all tie directly to those top issues on the slide before, right? So metrics, analytics, and reporting. This is where, and then planning for budgeting and forecasting. So those top two are about this notion of being more strategic. They're moving from the rear view mirror view to a windshield view. And that's exactly what we're seeing as the change in the role of the CFO or chief accounting officer in these companies, right? They've got to become more of a co-pilot looking out the windshield to the future and helping the CEO manage the business better. And that's where you can see these priorities starting to show up.
Tom, one comment I'll make, and it kind of ties back to Lisa's point about the blurring really of the member in public and the member in industry, is I think about, the kind of the growth that's happening in client accounting services and really skills that are needed to be, an effective leader of the CAS practice, and just how close that mirrors what it takes to be an effective CFO or controller in industry. So maybe you or Lisa just comment on that a little bit.
Yeah, well, for me, it was, I think 2 years ago at Engage, we had a big finance track going on. And when we were listening to the questions coming from the audience, it sounded like they were different in a way. And I asked, raise show of hands, how many of you are in public accounting? And half the audience raised their hands. So it was those CAS practitioners who gravitated to the topic because it was about these types of things, right? So it is showing that the CAS groups out there, client advisory, this is the same movement. And quite frankly, the whole profession is starting to move into more strategic value-added roles and away from the traditional compliance to a degree. So this is where you start to tune up your advisory skills, as you will, as AI starts to supercharge all this.
I love that, Tom. I think that's perfect. And for those of you who may think of client accounting services as the traditional bookkeeping services that we offered back in the 80s and 90s, it is not your father's client accounting services. This is, again, that moving up the value ladder and providing strategic insights, anticipatory thinking, and helping with these types of questions that you see on what's top of mind for CFOs. So if it's top of mind for a CFO, it's top of mind for your client. And these are capabilities that you can begin building out in either your client advisory and accounting services team or within your finance team. So it's a roadmap for the future, I think.
Exactly. And I think, look at the side part where what are those top kind of prompts there, those first 4 or 5. Telling better stories with KPIs, that's a big area that we're seeing. Storytelling is becoming a new skill. Integrated planning, the CFO and the finance people becoming part of the organizational strategy. Obviously, data governance, as you get more complex systems, that data is more important than ever. And then AI use cases, we're seeing real live AI applications like anomaly detection, writing MD&A reports, analyzing financials, and the general productivity, because Copilot is pretty much the standard platform, and you should be leveraging all the type tools that you got within that if you're a Microsoft shop.
Tom, I know there's so much more we could talk with you about. You mentioned the changing role of the CFO moving from the windshield to from the rear view to the windshield. I want to let everyone know that in your slides for today, make sure you download those, because we've got a couple of additional insights from Tom that include that shifting perspective and also the change in mindsets that are needed to adapt in this environment and what's really going to drive success. So make sure you download those. Tom and his team have created some really thought-provoking and insightful white papers that you'll have available to look into. But Tom, I wanted to dig into some of the new resources that your team has been developing, and I'm excited about this one on business resilience. Do you want to give us a quick look at what we might find in there and the value of it?
Yeah, I mean, everywhere you go, right, all we keep hearing is economic volatility, the geopolitics, and the shifts, tariffs, regulatory changes, inflation, you name it. So what we're finding is that, again, back to that senior finance leader in any organization, they're being called on to help the business navigate this uncertainty, thus resilience, right? So this is a business resilience toolkit full of useful, like, as you can see, strategic frameworks, financial planning, prompts for scenarios, and guidance on economic and policy risks. It's an amazing set of tools. And for you in public accounting, this could be also a map to help offer services to some of your clients that might not have a good CFO or finance team on staff that could do this kind of work. So it's useful for both. Make sure you download that. Again, there's a couple other ones that deal with finance transformation and one for reinventing finance for a digital world. But this one's our newest one and a pretty robust planning tool.
What I love, Tom, is that if you look at this resource, I was running a small $6 million retail operation before I joined here. I didn't really have instant access to a risk heat map. And I was doing this in 2007, man. Those were some rough times. So scenario planning, heat maps, financial planning and analysis tools that you can find in this toolkit.
Yeah.
Wish those had been around a few years ago.
Yep, absolutely. We're pretty excited about that. And then we can talk about the tariff piece next, because that's the other one that's on everyone's mind. You obviously heard Melanie and Rachel talk a little bit about that in the policy update. But we worked on this guide. There's a whole basically website dealing with tariffs. So that's something that you can use. It goes in tandem with the business resilience toolkit, but you'll see about insights on tariffs, mitigation strategies, real world case studies, and then obviously planning tools. And this was co-created actually with our friends up at CPA Canada, but it's a nice resource to help you navigate all this fun stuff going on with tariffs right now.
So Tom, you mentioned that you had your finance leadership group in July. What were they saying about tariffs? Are they trying to absorb the costs? Are they thinking that a few more months they might have to start passing them along? Did you get a sense?
Yeah, so this was a big topic at Gartner CFO in May. It was a topic at our CFO, our future finance group. And most of them, by far, when we poll them, are trying not to pass on the tariffs. The other piece they're doing is they've obviously learned the supply chain management from COVID. That's when they first got the shock. And now they've learned how to work their supply chains more flexibly. So now what they're doing, Lisa, is they're looking at trying to navigate their supply chains so that they don't have to increase costs or pass on things to consumers or other parts of their supply chain. So we're seeing that happen now. If they obviously can't do that, then you might end up with some of those forced price increases. But most of them are saying, we're told by our CEOs to do everything we can not to pass on those costs, which I think is pretty cool.
All right, more to come on that one for sure.
And then this one we're real excited about. Go ahead, Michael.
No, I was just going to say, Tom, and I know we're pretty exciting how we're launching these focused communities for portions of the membership. So I was going to invite you and Lisa to maybe talk a little bit more about this one for industry.
Tom and I are the guinea pigs.
Yeah.
That's why he's here.
And we got business and industry in that mix. So for all of you out there that are business and industry members, jump on the community now and hook up with me. I'm on there, and I'll post these resources that we talked about today. I'll post them in there in that business and industry. I think we call it the corporate finance community. So look for that community and sign up. Lisa, talk about your side.
Yeah, so we're starting on the public accounting side. We are starting with PCPS, which is the private companies practice section. It's a practice management focused center for firms to belong to. And if your firm is a member of PCPS, then you can join our community. We're, like Tom, we're posting our resources in there. We're hoping to give you an area where you can build out your community, where you can build out your network, where you can engage more directly with the AICPA teams that are serving your particular areas. And we're so excited to launch it. And again, really encourage you to get in there and get active. This is a great way for us to all build networks, which have proven so valuable with examples like this town hall community that we love so much. So join us if you've got any questions. We've got resources that can help you figure out how to get logged in. And we look forward to seeing you in our Engage 365 communities.
Well, awesome. That's a great segment. Tom, we do have a significant number of industry members that dial into the town hall each week. So it's great to have you in here talking from that perspective. And we'll have you back soon. But stay with us as we're going to bring in the rest of our panel team to just open forum. And I'll kick it off maybe with the first question, just to stay with you for a second, Tom. I think it's important, Tom. A couple of questions have come in. I don't want to say challenging, but more clarity. CAS versus the role of the CFO or the CFO team in industry. And I'll make a comment and please ask you to elaborate. I think, Lisa hit on it well. CAS, today when we say CAS, there's a continuum of services that can be offered, and a public accounting practice kind of defines what that is. It can be, on a very basic level, or it can be up to and including advisory services. And I think depending on what level of service you're choosing to offer as a firm will depend on that overlap that you see in industry. But I see firms that have offerings that go right up into really what the Office of the CFO is doing in many cases. But maybe you can comment on that from your perspective.
Yeah, no, I think, you got everything from the average tax practitioner that has to help the client close their QuickBooks out. And yet we've seen many tax practitioners pivot into basically like a CFO role by taking that QuickBooks and starting to learn how to help interpret that for the client who doesn't understand accounting as a language very much, and start to build out how you can help them with their financial statement, and then turn that into a planning piece on how that company can actually plan, so they look forward instead of just getting the compliance down. So it's the same thing in the companies, right? You'll have very small or mid-sized companies even that all they're doing is trying to close their books. But if you look at the trends in all the new software, including at the very small level, people can now close their books in like a day or two instead of weeks or months. When I first started out way back in the 80s, it took me a month to close the books. And now you can do that in much limited time. You start to add AI on there, and now you can do a whole lot more. So that's where I'm seeing that go. So I think it's back to, as Lisa said, they define it the way they want to, but there are options for you to think about how you can continue to add value in this environment that's going on. Things are accelerating like crazy.
Yeah, great point. Lisa, I'll give you next question if you have one handy.
Really quickly, I'll address one about the communities. And there was a question about, will we have one for nonprofits? What other types of communities will we have? These are our pilots. So we've got launched with 3 particular groups, just so that we can ensure it's a great experience for all of you. And you can look for more communities to be launched in November and then throughout the course of next year as we look at demand and see where the interests are. Melanie, questions about those erroneous IRS notices. Any updates, any words of advice?
I saw them coming in. What I can tell you is we're highly aware of them. We are actually working with the IRS on the specific ones that I saw coming in, which is there's a handful of them. It's not just one. And we're trying to get some sort of resolution. The IRS is in the process of pinpointing where the problems are at before they can give some sort of guidance for it.
Thank you.
Well, final question, Melanie, please keep it quick, but just maybe a comment on one of the favorite topics, is just the preparedness or the awareness around the IRS ceasing to accept physical checks.
Yeah, and that has to do with the e-payments that Danny Warfel talked about. It's a hardship. We have submitted a comment letter, and we hope to come out with a resource soon.
Great. Thank you. Thank you all. Great discussion today. We're going to go ahead and close out here. We had a lot of discussion today about the modernization of the tax practice. Just wanted to remind everyone, we've got some great resources out there. A great place to start with AI on, in tax research. We've got some really good case studies on how firms are modernizing both workflow and some of their tools on the BlueJay platform. So please take advantage of that. We have a wonderful webinar coming up September 24th, and it's a teaser to one of our DCPA sessions. It's for CPE, and it's just going to be, we have formed an AI working group, AI CPA and CPA.com, working closely with Pascal Finette and many firms out there, large and small, and talking about how are they specifically beginning to see the adoption of AI take root in the firm. And so we want to begin to share out some of those case studies and use cases with you. So it'll be, I think, a very intriguing 1 hour if you want to kind of get the latest and greatest on what's happening across the landscape on AI. We have registration is open for digital CPA in December, so please do take advantage of that. And then, Lisa, we've got a full slate between now and the end of the year of upcoming town halls, with the next one being September 11th. So I know.
Yeah, so a real quick call out that I've gotten a question about where's the September 7th town hall? That's Labor Day week. A lot of folks are going to be taking vacations or taking kids back to school, those kinds of things. So the next town hall is September 11th.
Great. And I know we're deep into planning our content for the balance of the year, and we'll continue to bring relevant and strategic information to all of you. So thank you, Lisa. Great job today. Thanks to the attendees for being with us, and hope everybody has a great rest of the week.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for your participation. You can also subscribe to the AI CPA Town Hall series on your favorite podcast platform, as well as watch archives on YouTube and find resources at cpa.com/townhall. Tune in for live broadcasts Thursdays at 3 p.m. Eastern Time.